Oh, I just get so excited about life. And sometimes this week I found myself even saying, what are you so excited about? I don't know. Just life itself and the freedom to express ourselves in the way that we choose and to be our natural, whole selves. So we continue today with our series. I've decided I'm going to call it an unlimited series because we don't know how long it's going to be. But instead of saying that every week, I'm going to just say we're in our unlimited series. And it is, who is Ernest Holmes? And probably we could never run out of ideas for that. Last week we talked about Troward because John invited us to. And this week we are taking a deeper look into Troward. Thomas Troward, the judge, wrote the book, The Creative Process in the Individual. And our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, read that and others that he wrote. Now, last Sunday morning, I was ready early to come to church, and we have a certain time we leave, so I decided, since I was so excited about Troward, that I would just sit down and read some more. And when I sat down to read some more, I came upon a part of it that for me was what I'm calling a book stopper. David and I often find that we stop on a page, and I'm sure some of you do too, because I know you shared with me that some of you do the same thing I do, just open to a page, read what's there, and then just ponder and think about it. And how does that speak to us in that moment? And how might it have changed from the way it spoke to us a previous time that we may have read it or thought about that idea? So when I came upon that part, I realized that he was using an analogy that really spoke to me. It's really simple, and that may be why I like simple. And I believe this teaching is simple, but we can get stuck in it sometimes. So David and I began sitting there before coming here last week, when we're usually studying what we're going to talk about, and we were talking about this. I was like, you've got to hear this part. It's magnificent. It's so easy to understand. And so throughout the week, we've been talking about it and having the best conversations, including realizing the way that we each express ourselves personally and the way that we share life as we know it present day. And we are human beings living this spiritual experience, but we sure do experience the human, don't we? And we get to look at how we're going to experience that human in a more spiritual way. So Troward states that consciousness can only be attained by the recognition of something which is not the recognizing ego itself. Consciousness is the realization of some particular sort of relation between the cognizing subject and cognizing object. That's not the simple part. In quantum, this is called the subject-object split. That's not the simple part. But he goes on to say that he wants to refrain from the academic terms and put his ideas into the speech of humans. So he uses this simple analogy as an explanation of his meaning. Now comes the simple part. Let us take the illustration of a broom and its handle. The two together make a broom. That is one sort of relation. But take the same stick and put a rake iron at the end of it, and you have an altogether different implement. The stick remains the same, but the difference of what you put at the end of it makes the whole thing a broom or a rake. And I'm adding now, or a mop, or a dust mop, or a hoe, or a shovel, or whatever you choose to put at the end of the stick. Simple, yes? In Troward's analogy, the thinking and feeling power is the stick, and whatever one has put on the end of it represents manifest form. The quality of consciousness back of the stick determines the idea one projects. This thinking and feeling power he's writing about is the law. It is the aspect of law that is God. The quality of our thoughts and feelings placed through law manifests accordingly. Our understanding of God, the importance of the quality of our own thoughts and our own feelings, and the ideas that we place into law, or on the end of our stick, are relevant to our enjoyment and health of life, our quality of life. Another analogy that I think is simple that we came up with, although I'm sure it's out there somewhere too, but I like our little details. We discussed is the understanding of that primordial soup. The whole is God, and there are a variety of items found in the liquid broth, and we get to choose what those items are that we see or experience. So for this time, let's think about the carrots. The carrots are in the broth. While the carrot is in the liquid is also in the carrot. I even went so far as to say, you know how much that is like life itself? Because you can take that carrot out and squash it between a paper towel and take the liquid out of it in that idea, but you can't in us. No matter what we do, we cannot take the God out of us. What a gift and a blessing that is for us to experience. So it soaks through the carrot, the broth does, just as while we are in God, God is also within us. Life is a unity. There is no separation. When Holmes shared about law, he focuses on the creative process and the concept that thought sets the law into motion. We quite often talk about our symbol up there, and they're even on my earrings today. They're all around us. The law is operating all around us in this process. He uses the analogy of likening the law to gardening. So if you're a gardener, this one might speak to you. Whereby the law is neutral, like soil. It doesn't decide what to grow. It grows whatever is planted. So your thoughts are the seeds, and your life experiences are the harvest. Law simply operates based on the input. The input determines the output.
Getting back to the stick with Troward, he says, our thinking and feeling power is the stick, and the conception which it forms is a thing at the end of the stick, so that the quality of its consciousness will be determined by the ideas which it projects. But to be conscious at all, it must project ideas of some sort. Those ideas are our thoughts.
We like that part.
Yes. And I just want to share, I had to smile when Deborah was talking, because it brought up a memory of myself there. But the idea that the Spirit doesn't determine for us what we want or what we want to use. We bring up that consciousness on our own, project it into universal substance, and it comes back to us. And the reason it reminded me of that, because one of the first jobs I ever had was being a caddy at the golf course. And I didn't play golf, didn't know anything at all about golf, but somebody said, hey, they're hiring caddies, and so I went to do it. And we come up to the first first tee, and he asked me for his club. And it's like, hey, they're all sticks to me. I don't know. And I said, which one do you want? And he says, I want the driver. And I said, well, okay, which one is that? Here I am, universal substance. I don't know what you want. I don't know what you're going to use it for. I have no idea. You need to be a little more specific. It's all sticks to me. And so all I was told was I have to keep my eye on the ball and find out where the ball goes so I can tell him where it is, so I can help him find it. But he didn't tell me I had to choose which club to give the guy.
That's a great one.
So the thinking and feeling power is the stick. It's the law. It's the operation of divine creativity. The conception and the form is at the end is the manifest form. That's what we have brought it in to be. So we brought the stick in to be a broom or a mop, whatever. It's a result of our thought processes that brings it into whatever it is. Consciousness creates form. Our thought creates the form that we use. We can use the law to produce whatever we wish to experience, and the law is a tool that we use to create tools, if you would, to build our reality. How we use the law and what tools we create are up to us. We can use the law for tools that can be used for our higher good, or we can use the stick to swat at beehives or poke tigers. The law really doesn't care. The law will give us whatever we put into the creative process. Unfortunately, we can use the law to produce what we do not wish to experience as well. What we think about, we bring about. The undifferentiated substance follows the direct lead of our predominant thoughts. In this example, we're using the stick as a pointer to tell spirit what we desire and what we wish to experience. And then it will go with us wherever we decide to go. Here's another different way of how we can use tools. And you remember with the prayer of St. Francis? It says, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. You see the tools there. Let me be this, let me be that. Make a change in the world. Let me be the instrument, the vessel, the stick, the conduit of divine possibility brought into the world for the good of all. Let me be a clear channel that shines divine light into the dark places of our misdirected consciousness. Let me be the tool that fixes the broken parts of all the world relationships. As Ricky Byer says, use me, O God, show me all that I must do. Notice that all these statements, from St. Francis to Ricky Byers to my own statements here, are all personal initiatives. Not asking God to fix the world, not giving us what God thinks is right, but recognizing what is mine or ours to do, and taking personal responsibility with the divine power at our disposal to make a divine difference in the world. The rewards that we receive through this process are not unsolicited gifts from God. They are consequences of personal consciousness in action. They are consequences of choosing a positive mental equivalent for every circumstance that we come across. Making a shift in consciousness, choosing the appropriate tool for every single challenge. When St. Francis says, it is in dying that we are born to eternal life, he means death of the separated ego self, and recognition of the one unified self, our unified nature with all that is, knowing we're all in this together in the one life. And so, according to that, what tool do you choose to be?
Yeah, and I love that golf club analogy because it's all right there in one case, isn't it? A whole bunch of different tools. Or how about our junk drawers? Whole bunch of tools for different things that we do around our homes. And so, what about you? What's on your plate today? What are you looking to shift or move in your life, or just simply experience more of? Because this excitement that I've been feeling in every moment lately, regardless of what's going on, I'm kind of liking that. It's pretty awesome. So think about this as we're thinking about how we're using our stick. Troward originally wrote and published his book, The Creative Process in the Individual, in 1910. Our personal copies are written in 1915, 5 years later, and our copy is the 32nd printing of Troward's book. In just 5 years, the book had to be reprinted over 30 times. Troward was definitely using his stick well, wasn't he? Our thoughts carry real power. They shape how we heal, grow, and experience life. And I know a lot of us are in healing stages and doing it well, learning lessons along the way. Our founder wrote this about Troward. Troward eclipsed anything I ever read. In fact, I couldn't help saying to myself, this is exactly what I feel. This solves the problem of dualism. This is the law. So someone else who really did a magnificent job of growing themselves throughout their life was Helen Keller. And John asked us to talk about Troward, and then the next week he brought me a book, an old Reader's Digest with my birth date on it. And so I started reading that this week, and there was an article about Helen Keller. And I thought to myself, you know, I remember in 4th grade, speaking of our childhood, I remember in 4th grade, the teacher read about Helen Keller. Instantly, I felt a relationship with her and an admiration for her. And I've held that all these years whenever someone said about anything about Helen Keller or a quote from her. But I realized this week that I'd never actually studied her life. So you're going to be hearing more about her upcoming. But today I'm going to share one story of how she used her stick well. Maybe she still is in the eternal. So she had a teacher, Annie Sullivan, who came and lived with her. And Helen Keller was both deaf and blind. And her teacher was trying to get her to understand, and she was getting extremely frustrated, and she couldn't understand and wasn't understanding until one magnificent day she describes in her book as a breakthrough when she realized that the motion of writing the letters on her hand, and she realized that while there was cool water running over her other hand, and she realized that it symbolized the idea of water. She made the connection between the words on her hand, one hand, being written there, and the feel of the water on her other hand. And I think we can all connect to that. and relate to that. There are moments in time where we have huge ahas, and they're life-shifting for us. So this is what she writes in her autobiography about that moment. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motion of her fingers. Suddenly, I felt a misty consciousness as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought, and somehow the mystery of language was revealed to me. I knew then that W-A-T-E-R meant the wonderful, cool something that was flowing over my hand. The living word awakened my soul, gave it light, hope, set it free. Wow, what a magnificent moment that must have been of truly realizing God and realizing the power of staying the course in your life, not only for Helen but also for her teacher. Staying the course that we choose, that we affirm that we want. And so I am knowing right now that each one of us is having an awakening in this now moment to the greater good that is ever available for each one of us. And in so knowing that, we're going to conclude with a poem that Troward put at the beginning of the first chapter that was written by Walt Whitman. I say, no man has ever yet been half devout enough. None has ever yet adored or worshipped half enough. None has begun to think how divine he himself is, and how certain the future is. I say that the real and permanent grandeur of these states must be their religion. Otherwise, there is no real and permanent grandeur. And since we know there is, we are it, expressing it beautifully in the world. And so it is.